So, hi, Steve. Thanks for joining me again today. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Hamilton Clark, my good friend and very experienced coach and consultant. Just picking up from our last conversation, Steve, when we were talking about purpose, after our conversation, quite a few things came into my mind. And really, I wanted to talk to you a bit more, really. But on this occasion, I wanted to talk to you about this issue of personal values and
Sure.
maybe how you might tackle it from a coaching perspective. Um, and I would like to kick off by asking you, what do you think makes values discovery such a foundation piece of coaching work that you might do with leaders?
Okay, you're like asking the good tough questions right at the beginning. Yeah, so thanks for that. I guess fundamentally, values discovery sort of boils down to supporting leaders in making effective decisions, decisions that have impact. And in that context of executives and their leadership role and about having impact, it's about helping leaders consistently and consciously align their decisions to their values and to the values of their organization, right? So that over time, and it's important, this over time piece, they're more likely to have a positive impact on the business, their teams, and the people around them. And the big piece these days, where everybody seems to be talking about it, is because we're living in this VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It's tough for leaders, and so having values-based decision making allows leaders to sort of step above it all, and transcend that parental and even cultural conditioning and belief structures that have been put into place, so that they're more aware of who they are and ultimately lead authentically. And that word gets used a lot as well, but that's what it's about. So it's really a powerful tool, values discovery, to help leaders get in touch with who they are, right? And so that they can consciously, and I do underline that word, consciously guide them on how to behave through making the decisions. So I think, was it Disney? He said, it's not hard to make decisions when you know what your values are. So that kind of sums it up, really.
Yeah, thank you for that answer, because it kind of resonates with some of the thinking that I had from our last conversation about purpose, where we were talking about, really finding out your purpose makes a big difference as well for you and the team in terms of your direction of travel. And I guess,
Yeah.
so from what you're saying, I reckon that values must be an underpinning sort of foundation to all of that in terms of your purpose, etc. It will drive purpose as well. But let me ask you, I think there's lots of different views around what this thing is. So
Yeah.
what would you say are values?
Yeah, good question. They're the bedrock of behavior, right? They define what's most important to us and actually create the framework on how we make decisions. So they're the driving force between or behind our work and our passions. And that's why organizations, they recognize the power of values and they publish it, right? They support and they promote it through their corporate values as a guide to how people behave and communicate and interact with each other. And the interesting piece here, Joe, for values at a personal level is because they're so deeply ingrained, we're actually often, as leaders, not aware of what they are and how they really shape our decisions and our actions on a daily basis. And I think the only exception really is when they get stepped on.
Sure.
So you think of somebody who's being rude to you or has cut you off in mid-sentence and you get pissed off, and it's because they've stepped on your values unconsciously. So examples of values are varied and very wide depending on the people that you speak to and the executives, and can include concepts or values such as adventure and courage, education, family, loyalty, unity, and many, many, many others. And tapping into those is really important to help leaders sort of align their decision making to their values.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know. Does that make sense?
absolutely makes sense.
Yeah.
And what I was thinking here then is, because it's such a personally ingrained thing, I suspect
Yeah.
the vast majority of people, unless they've done some work on their personal values to make them super clear for them,
Yeah.
or maybe work through some personal development, um, they're probably undiscovered in some respects, or maybe that's not the right way of describing. Maybe they're not as well articulated as perhaps they could be. So
Yeah.
transitioning into a coaching kind of context, how would you exactly uncover somebody's values through the coaching process itself?
Yeah, it's a good point, that because internally we kind of know what our or we think we know what they are, especially when they've been stepped on. And the coaching process, the discovery, is about bringing them up to the surface.
Right.
So it's really important to recognize that values are intimately related to our needs, right? So whatever we need, whatever is important to us, whatever is missing from our lives is what we value. Um, and values are passionate, they're unique, they're lived and concise. And against that background, there's a variety of different ways of doing values discovery. Everyone's got their own way. But some of my favorite include the exploration of people's inner experiences,
Mm-hmm.
thoughts, stories, feelings, what's important to them. So things like, thinking back to peak experiences and how they felt, who was around them, having a look at triggers, things that set them off in terms of making them happy or angry or not. All right. What else? Things about, role models and the characteristics of what they admire in role models. Favorite movies and books, and what parts of the characters or the elements of the story really attract them. And by examining all of those, we get to bubble all these different values up to the surface, and then start being able to choose which ones actually really matter in the day-to-day decision making for a leader.
Yeah. So tell me, what happens next? How do you actually, so you've done some conversations
Yeah.
using illustrations, etc., etc. What happens next?
Okay. So we do the discovery. We find all these values, and sometimes you can come up with 20 or 30 values, and the idea really is that we only really can remember up to about 10.
Right.
So what I do is it's a 3-step process. One is rank order the values, right? So wherever possible, develop a way of remembering them easily. It's kind of like learning to sing the alphabet. One of my clients, for example, all of her values start with funnily enough, the letter F. And so she's got her values, all our F words, but it works super, super well for her. And then the second step is to rate them out of 10, how well you're honoring each one of them. This is super, super important. So you got your list, you're ranked ordered 1 to 10. How well you then honoring each one of those? And it helps leaders understand where they need to spend a little bit more time in their lives. For me, for example, fatherhood is number 8, and I was honoring it sort of 4 out of 10 at one point in my life.
Right.
And I realized I needed to spend more time there. And then the last piece, and this is to keep it alive and to keep it conscious, I get my clients to really put it into their calendar. Every 6 months, go back to their Excel where they'll keep their values and revisit them, right? And why do they need to revisit? Because our lives, the conditions in our lives change. We mature, we grow, and our priorities change. So it's important to go back to them every 6 months. So rank order, rate them out of 10, track them over time.
I really love that. The ranking, assess them, in terms of your honoring of them, and then almost like a checking in with yourself.
Mm.
I was just wondering whether there was a fourth element, which may come in part two, really,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
which is about making some kind of assessment as to the extent to which your context is enabling you to honor them. I'm just thinking
Yeah,
particularly in a work context, whether,
absolutely.
your situation perhaps, I think very often, particularly in a coaching situation, we get into conversations where it's about fit. Do I fit here? Do I feel that, I'm working at my best? Is the best part of me showing up
Showing up.
here?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
sometimes it might be oneself, but sometimes it might be contextual. And I was just wondering whether sort of a conversation about the extent to self-assessment as to the extent to which the environment, the context, the situation they find themselves allows, how much does it allow for them to honor their values? I don't know, just a thought.
Absolutely.
Just a
It's
thought.
it's a great thought, and I tend to cover that, and you've got me thinking that maybe I need to cover it as a very specific point. I cover it a little bit more implicitly in understanding people's triggers in the environment in which they
Right.
work,
Yeah.
because environment has a huge impact on how
Sure.
people show up. So what are the triggers, right, that set people off positively or negatively? And then a separate coaching piece can be, how do you manage your environment?
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
this, Steve. Thank you, because I
yeah.
think that you've picked you helped me pick an issue which I think often doesn't get enough airtime, particularly in a coaching context. And I think
Mm.
it's, very often execs or individuals, they want to get down to the nitty gritty and focus on the task of improving something.
Yeah,
Um, and sometimes you just need to do a loop back and let's talk about how your values influence your ability to
yeah.
something, whatever.
It's a really good point you mentioned. It. It's about getting ready. A lot of clients kind of that I work with want to jump into the coaching. Well, you can't run the 100 meters immediately. You
Yeah,
actually have to get ready for it.
yeah,
And values discovery is about getting ready to then being able to lead effectively, to run that 100 meters.
yeah. Fabulous. Thanks so much for sparing time with me today talking about this. Very
Yeah.
thought provoking. Any final words of wisdom, Steve?
Yeah, I was reading a book by a lady called Susan David, and the name of the book is Emotional Agility. And she's got one of her chapters about values and whatnot, and she's got this quote, and the quote says, above all, a value is something you can use. It helps you place your feet in the right direction as you journey through life, no matter where your life leads you. And I
Wow.
just wanted to share that quote because, yeah, it kind of sums it all up, really, in terms of taking you to the right direction. So, yeah, thanks for asking that, Joe. Yeah.
Yeah, fabulous last thoughts. So thanks so much, Steve. Great to catch up with you and see
Yeah.
you again very soon. Bye for now.
Thank you. Yeah. Cheers.